Hi, welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to continue working on Adam's wonderful 1966 Mustang. I'm trying to sort out his leaky power steering. And last time I completely refurbished the power steering ram, so we know that's no longer going to have a leak. Today's mission is to sort out the rather extremely leaky control valve. But good news is I've got Paul to give me a hand.
Hi mate, I made you a nice cup of coffee.
Thank you, sir.
Unfortunately I've got a couple of jobs to take care of. I'll be back shortly.
Okay. Move these out of the way. All right, let us begin. So now we get to tackle the control valve. Now the bit obviously I'm going to be playing around with is at this end. I think I can get away with leaving these two hydraulic pipes in place, but to make my life a little bit easier, I'll just pop it in the vise. I'm just going to start by undoing this little dust cover, which isn't doing a very good job because the rubber left the building some time ago. And it's quite nice that in the kit you do actually get a replacement for all of that. So if I take that off there, now let's have a look at the new one. You can see I've actually got a little bit of rubber in there, obviously, and it's nice and shiny and new. That's going to make all the difference a little bit later on. I'll see what's underneath first. So I'm just going to scrape off all this old dirt underneath here. Without a dust cover, driving down a nice dusty sandy road, and you're going to end up getting loads of grit into your steering, which is not going to be a good thing. And of course, once that grit starts moving around places, it's going to start damaging seals and stuff. And thankfully, in a way, the seals are the softer part of the equation. So hopefully they're the ones that have perished, not all those shiny metal parts in there. So I'm hoping that this little bit of refurbishment is going to do a world of good and stop any leaks. Right, so now that's nice and clean. We can go on to the next bit. I think what I'll do is just turn it over again. And then we can start taking it apart. I think I will start with these two little chaps at the end there. There we go. Put those back together again. I want to make sure that all of these are going to go back in exactly the same order. Now, this spring here is what kind of basically keeps the ball that is obviously actually been driven and driving the valving, if you like. That actually pops that backwards and forwards. And you can see just on the edge there, there's a little black seal, almost like an O-ring. So I'll just pop that in there. So we have one of those. So definitely going to be replacing that in 1 second. Let's just undo this. This is our little adapter plate there with the O-ring seal. So let's put that down there. Some movement, and we can get to this seal here, but it looks like it's going to be quite difficult to get out. So what I might now do is attack it from this side. So I'll just undo these as well. Where are we looking? There's a gasket just here, which we will change because we do have one in the kit. And the main reason I've left those hydraulic pipes in place is just they seem to be quite key as to which way around they go. So. And what orientation. So if I can avoid disturbing them, I'll carry on this way. If they get in the way, I will have to change them. Interesting. So you can see just inside there, there is a little seal, which we do have in our kit there. And I think you can see there's a seal here, just like the one on that shaft there. And so that will be another one we need to change. There's also some inside this bit here. So you can see there's a little gasket there. We've got some replacement ones, so we'll definitely get around to changing those. Also, actually, there's a little pin just there, so I just rotate that round a little tiny bit to about there also. Now, what I should be able to do now is actually push that out. Like so. I'm not sure it's supposed to be quite that easy. And then I think we should be able to then perhaps. Okay, so now we can get that seal off, which is good. But also, so that's one side of the ball. Again, actually, you can see a little bit of wear on there. We have got some new ones, so it might be worth changing those as well. So now with that out of the way, I can now move the ball. And again, There's a little bit of wear in places, but we have a new one, so we might as well change that as well. And of course then inside here we also have, there we go, so that's the other half. So those little chaps, we can replace all of those, which is lovely. And there's all kinds of stuff in here. I guess this is old grease. So now you can see all this kind of old grease and power steering fluid. So obviously we'll just clean all that out and put some new stuff back in. And last thing, let's just try and get this little chap out. So this, the last little carrier here, there's a little shuttle, if you like, that whizzes backwards and forwards with the ball joint in it. Now, you can see it's kind of maybe coppery. It could be perhaps a bronze or a brass, but it looks more like copper. And the little holes in there, obviously that's just kind of capture the lubricant, the grease, whatever it is, just to make sure this thing moves around freely all the time, because after all, that's the bit that's moving, to actually make sure that your power steering actually works when you move it from one side to the other. This is the bit that actually drives the valve body. But I think once I've cleaned it up and then given it a load more grease again and put it back together again, it should be okay. And I think then what we'll do is we'll put all the new parts back in on this end first, and then start worrying about the main valve body itself. And although it has got a grease nipple, obviously to load it up with grease afterwards, I'm definitely going to put as much as I can in before we get too much further. I'm even going to put a little bit into here as well, into the end. So I'm just going to pop that guy in there like so, and hopefully I can get it all the way through. So the ball is going to go, and then pop that in. Just get this into the right position. So I've got to try and line up my holes, even though it's pretty much there on the tightness. It's still got to get the pin in, pretty much there. Can I see if I can? I can get that in nicely. So it's nice and tight. I'm just going to now pop in the pin like so, and then that can now go back inside, which is great. So the last thing on this side is just a bit of gasket, and there we go. And the final thing, nice new gator. Look at that, that's going to make all the difference. Now I'll bolt this up nice and tight in a bit, but now we're ready to attack the valve body. Now, as the name suggests, the valve body is where the valve lives, and that is this little chap going from that side all the way through to that side. Now, really, this is the magic of the power steering. So obviously when you steer to the left or to the right, obviously you want the power to only push in that direction, not the opposite direction. So this rod here actually pushes the valve backwards and forwards in the valve body, and that in turn redirects the flow of the high pressure fluid coming from the power steering pump. So that pushes to either side of the piston, depending on which way you want your power steering action to push. So it's obviously quite an important part of the system. Now, if I can try and get it out, and I've got to basically push it through. There's a little ring here, like a clip that just holds in this little sort of foam pad. So I'm just going to try and push it through a bit further if I can. Oh, there we go. So that's the ring. So you can see it's got like a little split there, but that's just like a spring just to hold everything in position. We've then got this little pad which we've got a replacement for. And then we've also got, hopefully, well, I keep pushing it out, we should have another couple of seals there as well. Got to be a bit careful when I'm pushing this that I don't damage anything inside. So, oops, there we go. So now I'll pull that out there like so, and then you can see you've got one of the seals here. There's actually a little bit of damage at this end of the seal, which is interesting. And then there's one on the other end, hopefully. Let's have a look. Yeah, so there's one on the other end down here. So it's a little nylon spacer, and then you've got the actual O-ring as well. So I'll put those back together for a second. So now there should be nothing left in there, but you can see you've got your little channels here. So of course, as you're moving this backwards and forwards inside the body, then obviously the fluid that's coming in here will either get sent through, say, this channel or maybe through to the other side. So that's how that actually works. So what I've got to work out now is why I've got more seals than I think I should have. So got those two there, which makes sense. Now interestingly, you can look inside, you can actually see a couple of splits that are in sort of the bits that would be sitting either side of here, and that is how the fluid makes its way through these two flexible parts into our ram there. And I can't see any signs of any damage or anything, so it's good to go. Basically, once I just replace the seals, everything can start going back together again. Right, so I'll just pull this one out of this end. Right, that's actually looking in quite good nick. But if we look at the one at the other end, so the one at this end, which of course is the end where the knuckle is, where the ram is, you can see it's actually quite badly mashed. So it's all really rather damaged, and I would imagine an awful lot of fluid is actually leaking out of there, which is probably why it was much more leaky than it perhaps should have been. And obviously because of the grease was missing, maybe it had been washed away, and because the dust cover wasn't there, there's quite a few reasons why this was actually going to be leaking fluid. So hopefully fixing this little seal here is actually going to be enough to fix the power steering and stop that leak for good, which would be rather lovely. But you can compare it to the other end. You can see that one is actually in quite nice order. It's in quite good nick. And thankfully we have got a replacement set of seals in the box for the kit. So I'll just swap those over and then we should be good to go. So I'll just take off the really bad one first. I'm just going to try and get the little sort of plastic spacer or whatever that is out the back there. So pop that over there. Now I've got a choice of a couple of sets, it seems, in the kit, but I think we're good here. So pop that onto there like so. And again, I don't have to pre-oil them because these things are absolutely dripping in all the juices coming out of this power steering. So put that one over there as well, the new seal. And pop that into position like so. So that's ready to go in, but also I'll probably have to take it apart again to actually get it in position. But before I go any further, there's another valve to play around with. This one just here, it's like a kind of a relief valve. Now, I think the idea is they just sort of pull out. So let's have a little look. Actually. So I'm hoping. Aha, okay, that's good. So there's a little spring. There should be another washer. Yep. There should also be a little piston as well. So this helps relieve the pressure when you're at the ends of your steering or whatever. And the other end should be much the same. You know what I might do? I might just try and tap it out from the other end. Get my hand underneath. Typically, so you can see it's just hitting on this little pipe here. So obviously after all that, I can't get away with leaving these where they are. I will have to just disconnect them a little bit or just undo it ever so slightly to be able to get that out and back in again. Just get this old O-ring. You can see it's not in brilliant shape, so it's quite good that we are changing it. Just twist it into position if we can. Like so, and then we can go into the other end. Right, so now with it vertical, I can just pop in that washer. Nice, and then the spring, and then our freshly re-O-ringed seal, and again I'll use that flat surface just to try and squish the two together. And it's going to be held in place by the plate that goes on the top there, so that's fine. So now that's in place there, I can now get back to our main shaft here. So what I think I'm going to do, because it's going to be quite fiddly, is actually pop in the seal first of all, and then try and work my way in. So just kind of get that first lip sort of underneath, and then problem is I'm going to end up pushing it all the way through, which would be a bit of a pain, but just if I can get it just down, it's looking okay. Right, brilliant. So now that's pretty flush. I'm pretty confident that the lip is actually located nicely. So we've avoided the mashing, which is the first thing. So now it's time for our little ring here. Pop that in there. So then it's time for this special little spring. I don't think it matters quite where it goes, so what the orientation is. I'll pop that in there, and I'm just going to just push it down again with our little rod here, or drift. Right, so that's now in place. So now for the new seal to replace the old one. So there's another bit of sort of refurbishment, if you like, that's going on. So that's good. So now, the thing is, to try and push this end in through the centre, it's going to be quite tough. It has got a nice little chamfer on there. I think it's a lot easier doing it this way around than the other. But I think to make my life a bit easier, I'm now going to bolt it back onto the rest of the assembly, and that's going to hold everything in place while I push that in place. Quite how I do the other end, I'm not quite sure, but we'll see. So if I just pop that onto there, like so. I may have to move our new rubber boot. And we'll see all this fiddliness. It's much easier on the bench than it ever would have been on the car. So I guess there's a tiny saving grace there. It doesn't matter how many times I wipe this thing, though, it just seems to ooze this power steering fluid, or transmission fluid as the instructions say. But now everything else on this end is refurbished, I can do this up effectively for the last time, which was nice. Just make sure we're happy with the gasket. Everything in position. Okay, so that's now back in position, which is great. Just make sure that's nice and tight again on there. Lovely. So we can now get back to this little chap. So that's going to pop in. Then we've got to try and get this now in to that rubber seal on the other end, and I'm hoping a little tiny bit of effort, it should just pop in. There we go, wonderful. So now I'm going to try and get this little seal in place. And again, this is going to be doubly difficult now because I've got to go over the inside but also into the outside. In fact, what I might even do, give myself a little bit of extra manoeuvrability, is just to pop this little nylon piece out. And again, I imagine this is how the last seal got a little bit mashed, perhaps when it was being assembled from the other end. In fact, looks like the difficulty is going to be the inside first of all, so I might try and push. bit of a struggle. But we have now got a little nylon part inside, it's like a big washer inside that rubber seal. So that is now all good, which means we're on the home straight, which is quite nice. So we now have the washer that just goes on there like so. Then we have this little cover plate. Like that. Then we have this kind of strange spring assembly. But now we need to have our new sort of O-ring going down here actually, so we'll just take that off again. Perhaps put that on that edge there. And then we actually have to pop on the last washer and then the last nut, but I've actually got a new one of those as well in the kit. And then I've got to set the setting correctly. So the idea of this is I just do it up so it's sort of reasonably tight. And then the idea is to back it off about 1/4 of a turn. When I say about, I mean exactly 1/4 of a turn. So that's nice position. So then I wind it round, take out the backlash. There we go, and then to about 1/4 of a turn. So that gives it just a little bit of preload, but not too much. And then finally, we have the cover. So it's quite nice to think that, although I wasn't really expecting to have to change this part, in fact we found a couple of things wrong with it. So now hopefully those leaks will be solved. I'll clean it all off again to get rid of all that fluid. And now finally it's time to put back onto the vehicle. Lovely. Now it would seem that we're nearly on the home straight with that control valve, and any minute now I'll have eradicated all of those nasty leaks from Adam. Right, well thank you very much for watching, and thank you for subscribing if you have. Remember to click the little bell to get those notifications. Also remember to click like if you do like the show, and also add comments and questions as well, because it's really good fun to go through them. And also if you've actually signed on as a Patreon, thank you very much. We do appreciate your support. Now I've got a top tip here from an Alan Jarovic. So apologies for mispronouncing your name there. Oh, hello, sir. Where have you been?
I've been getting through things.
Okay. All right then. Well, the top tip is so. So hi Ed, here's a top tip for stopping brake fluid to drip from brake lines when you work on them. Just slightly depress the brake pedal with something and that will stop entering fluid into master cylinder, and that's it. That's actually a very good top tip.
Yes, obviously what happens when you depress the brake, the rod goes through into the chamber forward, and it blocks.
Well, the piston's actually going to go past.
Yeah, it's going to go past the little port from the reservoir.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense.
So you're going to get a little bit of a burst of fluid initially.
A burst of fluid initially, but just make sure you keep the pedal down on the floor.
Yeah, and then after that, hopefully,
and that will solve the problem.
And it's probably a little bit easier actually than using the rubber glove technique, because it's the same sort of idea, but it's actually probably more surefire way of stopping that fluid from flowing. So that is a great top tip.
It's a really good top tip.
In fact, it's so good. I think we should do this possibly every week, in which case then, if you've got a top tip, do write in, send it in, and let us know, and we'll maybe give you a bit of glory on the show. Now I've got a steering related question here from a Roy McCarty. Now his question is, well, he has a question that's bothered him for years. In our Wheeler Dealers years, we built a pop hot rod, if you remember that one.
I do actually,
nice purple thing. It was kind of metal flake and very, very groovy for Mike's dad. It was all very good fun. Now apparently we did do this. We narrowed the Jag front end, which is obvious, but what do we do about the steering rack? Please put him out of his misery. Okay, we can do this for you, Roy. It's okay.
Yeah,
I think between us, we'll be able to remember what's going on.
I do remember, because we narrowed, obviously, the subframe on the Jag.
Well, first of all, the first thing that when Mike bought the car, it was an absolute nightmare. So it had terrible steering, didn't it? It was like you couldn't drive backwards.
No, because of the caster.
Yeah.
Everything was completely wrong. I think it was Vauxhall Viva.
Which was classic hot rod.
Classic hot rod back in the day, but it didn't go with the back. And I think the theme of the car, it had independent Jag IRS on the back, if you remember. So it seemed kind of a natural
Yes, to go
transition
XK8.
to Jaguar XK8,
yeah.
but obviously the track was too wide.
So we'd have had to have like kind of flared arches about 2 foot wide either side, which would be no good. So we narrowed the axle.
We narrowed the subframe.
But then that messes up, or the other subframe, but that messes up then the steering geometry completely. So what we had to then do is kind of recalculate everything and get a very special steering rack made. And so we went to Titan Motorsport.
I remember,
and we kind of
yeah.
gave them all the measurements, and they actually then were able to conjure up a kind of a specially custom built steering rack, which you put on there. And of course, obviously you had to calculate the Ackermans as well to make sure that when you steer around the corners, basically one of the wheels goes a bit further around the corner than the inside one, so there's no scrubbing as well. So it was actually really, really nicely set up at the end, but it obviously was quite a lot of work.
And it worked out perfectly, didn't
Yeah,
it?
but that car nearly killed the show, it's got to be said.
Oh no, yeah, I remember that car because it was in one series,
Yeah.
and because it took so long to do, we had to bump it to the next series.
Remember that? Okay.
Yeah, well we did. So it
Wow.
took that long.
Yeah, it was quite crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so much work. We did all the fiberglass work on the back, of course. We had Eddie come in and we did some sort of French tail lights, which was kind of cool. We obviously did all the suspension work. We had new wheels made, didn't we?
And
Image
I
wheels,
remember off camera, had to completely rewire the whole car.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
So
Well,
took all the
'cause-
wiring out, which
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like a big bird's nest.
and then start all over
Through the
again.
whole lot, and I just started off with the fuse box, and that's all I had. And I start with the fuse box, and
Just
then
went from there.
custom-made loom
That's
from
crazy.
there.
What a lot of work. Well,
A
there we
lot
go.
of
So
work.
that's it. So we basically got a custom-made steering rack. Titan did the job, and it was amazing. And actually, I even had one for the sofa done at the same time because I had problems with that as well. I wanted to get the geometry right, and as it was in my head and I was playing around with my SolidWorks, it was a perfect opportunity.
And just for your records, the date was, I think, 2013 for
How
the
do you
pop.
remember these things?
Well, I just remember all these important dates,
That was an
iconic
important date.
dates.
But it was a good. Actually, that was when we did the mental green Cadillac. As
Yes,
well.
we did. We did the Cadillac
Simon
in
did all that
2013.
amazing paint,
amazing
all the
artwork on
pinstriping.
the front. Yeah, but my favourite car was the following year, 2014, when we did the Lincoln, the Continental with the suicide doors.
Yeah, that was
63. What a lovely car.
And chocolate metallic brown.
Yeah,
Nice colour. With
that
a little
was-
bit of a bronze goldy fleck in there.
That was
Very
beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, that was
Absolutely
good.
beautiful, that car.
That was very cool. Right, well, we have another question here from Paul Breen. So hello, Ed. Congratulations on the programme. Thank you very much. Very nice. I have begun to catch up on the earlier episodes and am pleased to see you have Paul involved with you again. Very nice.
Thank you.
But his wife and he have a clutch of English classics, including a 79 Morgan Plus 8. That's in standard trim. It's great fun, but he understands that the cam is prone to wearing prematurely. Now, obviously, I guess it'd be a Rover V8, I guess.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Now, he said his car has done about 62,000 miles and he appreciate any guidance we could give him regarding replacement brand of cam, the low profiles, what is a fairly standard car. So that's from Paul in Sydney. Thank you very much. So that's a good question. So, I mean, I think with a Rover V8, obviously there's quite a lot of tuning stuff
Yeah.
out there.
But it's obviously going to be a hydraulic cam.
Yeah,
It's not going to be a solid lifter cam.
But that'd be more for a race sort of solution.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
solid lifter cam. Yeah, you'd have adjustable lifters.
Okay, yeah.
But obviously in this application, it'd be a hydraulic cam.
Because you just want it to go. You don't want to have to fiddle
Just
around
want
with
it
it too much.
Want it to go. And there are lots of variable options out there. I think it's a Typhoon.
Yes, I just remember there was some friends up the road used to build a Cobra, and they had a stump puller,
Yeah.
which is great. But
And
it's actually for the same
obviously,
range.
there's lots of different camshafts, obviously, and you can change the duration
Yep, and the lift.
and the lift of obviously the valves.
But obviously, again,
which
if
will
you're going to use it on a
improve
standard engine, it's
performance.
definitely worth going through the spec and just to see, because they're all going to be about the same sort of money. But of course, what you've got to think about is any other modifications you have to do to the engine, obviously, to make sure that it doesn't actually, the valves don't then hit the pistons when they're spinning around, because that would be a right old mess. So yeah.
And also, another thing as well, if you have the wrong valve springs and the valve opens too much, the valve spring can bind. So it's important that you obviously get that right.
That's tricky. Now, so obviously back in the day, obviously you know Rover V8s quite well.
Yeah,
so
I used
obviously
to.
you used to drag race them. So you had a
drag
four
race.
pop actually, didn't
I had
you?
a
I think?
4 pop. I started off.
Yeah, and then was it a TR7,
and then
but
I had
not a
a
V8, but with a V8 in?
Yeah, a TR7 with a Rover V8. Yeah, so TR8-ish.
Yeah, okay. And so you'd have used some pretty sporty cams in those.
I had sporty cams, but I ran a solid lifter cam.
Right, because
I think
you're
they called it. It was called a 256 back in the day. Solid lifter cam.
So it may still be available. It may have turned to stone by now. It's that long
Yeah.
ago. But then also, I mean, actually think about it. We did the Robomo car as well. That mad flip top thing. we
Yeah,
bought
I think
for-
the Robomo car just had a normal standard cam, normal hydraulic lifters.
But it's a good little engine. It still goes. And one day we will get it out onto the show because it needs a little bit of work. It's been in storage for a long time. But then also, I think about it with John's Range Rover. Then that's a car that obviously he's quite happy with his 3.5 litre
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
stock V8.
yeah.
But who doesn't need just a little extra bit of power?
Yeah.
I mean, so we'd be quite
so
interested.
I think we go maybe down the Typhoon or Cyclone route.
Yeah, we
because
are.
they seem to be called
Something windy.
after the weather. Yeah, so we can go
Damp
to something.
squall.
But what is
Well, the damp
important,
squall cam.
anybody that changes a camshaft, always change the lifters,
Right.
the hydraulic lifters.
Yeah.
you know, the two go together. Don't just put a camshaft in there and think, well, actually, my lifters look okay.
Yeah.
I use them.
But I don't know, when it comes
false economy.
to Paul, though, I think
Yeah.
one of the questions, well, his question is really, is he going to need to change them over? But obviously what you can do, Paul, is you could actually take off the inlet manifold, take out the valley gasket. You could do that with the engine still in position, but you might have to remove the bonnet and stuff. But essentially you could get in there quite easily, and then you could actually see the cam itself, couldn't you?
Loosen the rockers, take the push rods out, and you could actually lift the lifters out and have a look at the base of the lifter.
And see how bad the wear is.
Just see how they are.
Yeah, and then if everything's okay, just whiz it back together again. But if not, you could actually still repair the cam or change it over and the lifters while the engine is still inside the car. You'd have to take the front grille off the radiator, I guess.
Yeah, water pump,
yeah,
front
and then you
pulley,
can sort of
front cover.
draw it out.
Yeah,
so
and you can
actually,
get it out.
it's not an impossible job to do.
It is doable. It is doable.
And when you put it together, there's this really good stuff. It's like an oil thickener that you can get, and you just mix it with a little bit of oil, and you kind of put that all over all these surfaces. So when it first fires up for the first time, before the oil pressure is built up, and also you should do that anyway, sort of manually. But then, of course, that helps all the wear. It stops it kind of rubbing.
Yeah, the
and
metal
ruining
to
things
metal.
at the beginning. Yeah.
Initial startup.
Yeah,
so it's
great
really
thought.
important. But what's always important with all these cars, especially older cars, is, you know, frequent oil changes. It does, you know. Don't leave it too long to change the oil.
Well, that's the thing. So if you've got a good service history, chances are you might be okay, but it's probably getting, you know, certainly by the time you got to 100,000, I imagine you want to be thinking about changing a camshaft.
Yeah,
anyway.
and even with classics, if you don't drive for 5 years, but you've only done 200 miles, still change the oil because it's really important.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost too much to change the oil, but it can save you a lot of money in the long run.
Well, good luck with that, Paul. It's actually a very interesting question. Thank you very much.
Thank
now,
you.
shall we crack on with the Mustang?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things to do, but then I'll be straight with you.
All right, thank you. Right, well, let's just get this chap back in position. It's pretty much the reversal of how I got it off. Just have to remember how to do that. So, that chap goes about there. That's going to be a bit easier to put together because I'm no longer having to split ball joints, just reassemble them. But they may still spin, or try to, when I do up these nuts. So a little bit of pressure to clamp together should be enough. Okay, and then just to check, so this will go about there, I suppose. Brilliant. I've already added a bit of grease to these guys, but obviously once everything's together, I can go again with the grease gun. So now I can tighten all those up, and then the next thing will be the ram. Right, so it's finally time for our power ram. It's going to get a little bit fighty now because I've got to try and get these new rubbers, which are rather thick, into quite a small space. I don't know why they couldn't just put a little tiny extra bit of thread on, but there we are. So it's a little bit tricky because I've got to try and get the nut onto the end of the ram here. So I'm just going to compress down. So now, when I first took this apart, the lock nut, which is sort of the thinner one, was actually around the other way, which made it really hard to get apart. So I'm now going to put the big nut on first. So that should be like so. That's good. That's on bit. Before this drops off, I'm just going to pop the nut on at this end too. A little bit more, just so I can make sure that I've got the little holes in the castellations to actually match with where the split pin's going to go, which it does. That's fantastic. So now back to this side. Okay, so now we've got our ram in position. The last thing I need to do when it comes to the nuts and bolts is put in brand new split pins. Should never use second-hand ones, just in case. I'm just going to pop them in place and then bend them round. Right, so that is all of the split pins done. So the next thing are the hydraulic pipes. Now we've got the two that pop in to the ram here, and we've got these other two here. So I'll start with these guys. I can just about squid that into position, and same with that one. Right. Give myself a bit more room. That's it. And it's quite easy to cross thread them in this situation, so it's worth just making sure you've got it going up correctly. Right, so now the hydraulic pipes to the ram are connected. The last two are the high pressure one from the pump and then the return. Now obviously the return is not looking particularly healthy. There was a bit of moisture, or in fact fluid, coming out of here. So I've actually got a replacement. Thankfully I can still get that. And you can see straight away why there may have been an issue here. Obviously sometime in the past this is obviously broken off and somebody's kind of done a repair just using some of these clips here, and clearly they haven't really worked. So now I need to replace that, but of course to get this off I have to get to it all the way up there, and for that I need to drop the car down. Oh, well, there we go. So it's right in the depths. I can just about get onto that. I can't get on there, but what I will try is just trying to tap it off. Now, obviously we know because of the leak underneath, there isn't actually any fluid in the reservoir anymore, so hopefully I'm not going to cover the floor and whatever remains. There we go, fantastic. Right, so now back up and we'll get the other side done. Right, so now let's have a look. I should be able to thread it through. It doesn't look like it's very well clamped, so I just draw the pipe through, take off that rubbish clip. Right, so that is the offending article. So get rid of that. I'm kind of hoping I can thread that straight back through again, but I might have to clamp it after all. Let's have a look. Oh no, lovely. It's going to end up going up there again. It's going to go just to there. If I just put that on a little bit. It's roughly in the right place, so now I can work out how I'm going to thread that. Take off the protective cap. I should go underneath there, over there, somehow round. They definitely had a bit of fun designing this one. Feed it into place, and somehow I'm going to do that up. And while I'm here, I'll now do the other side, the other pipe. Right, so finally that Jubilee clip is now nice and tight, which means that new pipe is nice and secure.
I made you a cup of coffee.
Thank you. Where have you been?
Oh, I've been doing other bits and pieces. So what do you need a hand with then?
Well, I think now you're here, you could actually start filling up the reservoir with some new fluid.
I'll crack on.
Thank you. Well, I've pretty much finished my tea, so have you actually finished bleeding the system?
Yeah, I've gone lock to lock a few times, so I got most of the air out, so I just need to recheck the level now.
Cool. Okay, so once that's done, I guess the next thing is if you get in and I'll raise the car up and I can check the leaks.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Another chance for you to go up in the world. It's a nice car though, isn't it?
Lovely car. Absolutely lovely.
Okay, Paul, fire up the Mustang. And left to right, please. Well, that is all looking pretty good. So having refurbished the power steering ram and the control valve and that old manky hose, we've now got a leak-free Mustang after all. So Adam can drive and save a few quid on all that excess oil. So the next job on this vehicle is those flashing headlights, but that is a job for another day.